I just watched M. Night Shyamalan's new film, Knock at the Cabin, and I feel the best way for me to describe a lot of my feelings on it is to compare it to 2016's 10 Cloverfield Lane. This video will have some spoilers for both films, so if you're looking to avoid that sort of thing, this is your warning. Let's get into it.
It was obviously very important for her, for Dan, for all of us, that Michelle not be a character that is just reactive. She had to be strong, she had to be resourceful and obviously proactive. And this is a movie about someone who begins the story, essentially someone who runs from trouble. She tells a story in the middle, it's a very emotional story where you realize that's her condition. And this is really a story about this character coming to terms with that part of her personality and realizing that it's the last thing that you can do. And when there is trouble, you need to face it, and you need to grapple with it, and you need to deal with it.
Knight and I didn't... those things were just facts in the script, you know? We didn't kind of delve too deep into them, and sometimes he doesn't necessarily delve into the psychology of stuff.
Both films center around very similar situations. The protagonists are threatened by an individual or group of individuals who are convinced they're doing a good thing during a supposed apocalyptic event. Given the nature of these stories, the characters are crucial in making it a convincing exercise of suspense for the audience, wondering who or what to believe. In 10 Cloverfield Lane, Michelle is our focus for the entire film, as we never spend a moment away from her perspective, and because of this, we discover each of the other characters through her. Similarly, it is through Michelle that we fluctuate in our levels of trust or doubt of each of these characters' motivations. Conversely, Knock at the Cabin switches character perspectives quite frequently, even occasionally from protagonist to the antagonist, and as a result, we as the audience don't get to develop a strong attachment to any one character in particular, which I feel subsequently robs us of the process of determining with them who is right or wrong, and it comes across a little more straightforward, like we're just watching events happen instead of really feeling the events. Additionally, character development feels like it takes a bit of a back seat to the overall premise itself, as opposed to being a vehicle to enhance the emotional center of the story. Besides Leonard, who is very well played by Dave Bautista, every other character feels like they were written in an afternoon, just getting the bare minimum of characterization, which after each of their setups isn't really expanded on much. On the other hand, 10 Cloverfield Lane's priority is all about understanding these characters and their subtleties, so that the payoffs later in the film have a much stronger emotional impact and narrative weight.
All right, second word. Michelle is a
girl, a child.
no, she's older, see? So she is a...
Little princess?
No, it was woman.
John Goodman gave this 3-minute long, all in one take, camera slowly pushing in, intense speech. And we needed to cut, the movie for time and keep up the pace. And we found in that scene, he also gave this really crazy, menacing look that said more than any of those words needed to say.
We squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and squeezed it to get to the essence of it, because what is too much to be said? How do we, it became, I was amazed at how much we squeezed it, and when you watch it, it's breathless because we took everything out.
This aspect is what stood out to me as the most glaring difference in quality between 10 Cloverfield Lane and Knock at the Cabin. Both films arguably have the exact same goal and seemingly want to achieve it in the same way. The goal: to have the audience arrive at a point where they find out the truth of the situation in a satisfying and thrilling way, and the achieving of that goal to keep the audience guessing and engaged, perhaps switching a few times between believing and disbelieving the antagonist through some tense and claustrophobic storytelling. There is one particularly important difference between the two that I feel really raises the story of 10 Cloverfield Lane to a level beyond the starting premise of, is the apocalyptic story true or not? This key change happens during the scene where Michelle witnesses the woman desperately trying to break into Howard's bunker.
She's begging me.
You can't help her!
I'll be okay. It really hardly touched me at all.
This one moment evolves the narrative from being just about is Howard telling the truth or not to is the cost of Michelle staying with Howard greater than braving the events in the outside world. That slight structural shift not only heightens the tension and dread, with Michelle and the audience feeling even more trapped, thinking it's hopeless even if she escapes.
I know what you're doing. I see what you're doing. I know what you're up to.
But it also ties more deeply into her character arc that started from the very first scene. Now to contrast that with Knock at the Cabin's narrative flow, pretty early on in the film, the characters are shown news recordings of disasters that may or may not have been caused by their actions specifically. This happens several times without much change in the structural style of the film, and so there is never any sort of escalation in the plot once the first newscast is shown. It's more just a repetition of the same exercise until the characters decide they've seen enough to believe. Also, Andrew's explanation during the first couple broadcasts that they are pre-recorded and some of the disasters they're talking about and covering were already occurring events prior to their confrontation sacrifices some of the tension and takes away the guesswork by the audience of if this is really happening. The question introduced in the beginning of the film of is Leonard and his group telling the truth is never really developed further. Even during what could be considered downtime between the broadcasts, the film elects to show things that don't necessarily elevate the characters or the plot material, but feel included merely to add to the runtime, such as an extremely telegraphed chase sequence, well, more like a walk sequence with Wendelin, where Knock at the Cabin uses 2 to 3 minutes to show Eric and Andrew seeing Wendelin for the first time in a flashback, which I guess is supposed to help the audience feel like they can't sacrifice their daughter. I mean, obviously, that's a given from the beginning. Potentially another reason for it could have just been to strengthen the connection with the family, but I don't feel like it was particularly strong in that area either. Contrast that with 10 Cloverfield Lane's commitment to staying in the present with a similarly long segment where Emmett talks about missing a bus that not only perfectly illustrates why he's there with Howard, but we can see the years of regret that event has on him now that we wouldn't be able to get from watching a flashback of him at that time.
And I just got so worried about how bad I was gonna do up there with all those smart kids. So I missed the bus. And I didn't buy a ticket for the next one or the one after that.
So there's some of my thoughts on Knock at the Cabin through the lens of a similarly staged and structured film. Part of my reasoning for making this video was that I just love talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane, and this felt like a great opportunity to do it.
Oh my goodness. Is that Monopoly? Yeah, that's how we kill the time.
I also want to say, regardless of my thoughts on this film, I'm still a big Shyamalan fan and will always be excited for upcoming projects from him. These are, of course, my own feelings about the film, so please feel free to share your own, whether they're similar or very different. I'm looking forward to hearing what you all think of either or both films. Hope you all get the chance to keep watching more movies, and until the next video, I'll see you all later.